Sounds good.
Got it.
Okay, would you like me to start?
Are you, Liz, are you ready?
You're good to go now.
I'm ready if, Chris, if we're,
Yes, you are now live.
all right, let me start out then by reading off all the general details. All right, I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 1st, 2023. It is 1:01 p.m. and we are live on a digital platform. Present here at the meeting, we have Randy Allison, Eric Biter, and myself, Liz Mealy from the Finance Committee, as well as Body Katz from the General Body of Council, Council Vice President. From the administration, we have Skip Memmy and Derek Slaughter from the Mayor's Office, Chris Black from IT. And then we have, what did you say Mr. Mensler's first name was, Derek? Ryan Mensler, who's here from Presbyterian Homes, representing one of the items on the agenda, which we will get to here straight off. All right. So we have 5 items on our agenda today. And the item number 3, we will be starting with resolution for a TEFRA on behalf of Presbyterian Senior Living.
Oh, sorry.
Right. Yeah, go for it, Derek.
All right. Yep. So what you have before you is a resolution on behalf of the Presbyterian Senior Living here in Williamsport for tax exempt financing that they're applying, and Ryan will do a much better job of detailing why this has to come just for our local review. But essentially the tax laws changed in the 80s when organizations apply for tax exempt financing, even though it has no money from the city on behalf of the city, but it does require local review and approval. And with that, Ryan, I will turn it over to you to give a little more explanation.
Yes, so I am Ryan Mensler. I'm with the law firm Eckerd Siemens. I'm based out of Harrisburg, but we are bond counsel in this deal to Presbyterian Senior Living, who is a 501c3 retirement community that owns numerous retirement communities throughout Pennsylvania, some in Delaware, some in Ohio. They also manage facilities in New York and Maryland. So they're a pretty big regional player in the senior living space. Since COVID, they had a lot of deferred maintenance projects that they're looking to roll up into one large financing. The financing is going to be used to do minor capital improvements to their facilities, 12 facilities, which were outlined in a TEFRA notice that we put in the Sun Gazette on back in June, and we had a hearing. This is all required by the tax code. We had a hearing via dial-in that we advertised, where we fielded public comments regarding the usage of tax-exempt financing for this project. The reason why we need the city's approval is because the tax code requires that any tax exempt obligation that is going to be used by a 501c3 gets the approval of the issuer jurisdiction and the host jurisdiction. So because we're doing a project that is has locations in Delaware, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, we actually are using the National Finance Authority as the issuer. But because $515,000 of the proceeds are going to be used to make upgrades to the Williamsport facility of Presbyterian Senior Living, that gives the city host jurisdiction. So the tax code requires you guys to issue an approval that basically says you're not opposed to Presbyterian Senior Living using tax exempt proceeds to make those upgrades to its facility. This does not obligate the city in any manner. There's no financial impact to the city for issuing this approval. There's no liability. It's just back in the 80s, there was an issue where people were issuing these 501c3 tax exempt bonds and using them for nefarious projects. So now I say now, but 40 years ago, the tax code was amended to have this public approval requirement to try to cut down on those bad issuers. So in front of you, or maybe not in front of you, but for Thursday's meeting, I have a resolution that authorizes Derek as the mayor to sign the certificate of approval that we need in order for the interest on the bonds to be tax exempt. So I know that was long-winded, but if anybody has any questions or, any questions about what Presbyterian Senior Living is looking to do specifically at their Williamsport campus, I have the list of projects in front of me. I can gladly read those off.
Thanks very much, Ryan. Randy, Eric, actually, do you have any questions?
Sure. Thanks for letting me butt in, Randy. The only question that I have, so you have a very specific amount of $515,000. Should that amount exceed, should the project exceed that amount, would you have to come back before us to have this reapproved?
Yeah, so this is just for tax exempt money, so they can, to the extent that they're getting applications approved for any zoning or permits that they need, they can spend more than that. They just can't finance these projects more than that for $515,000. And if they did want to use more than $515,000 of tax exempt money, we would have to come back and get another approval for any overrun.
Okay.
Great. Anything further, Eric?
No, I have nothing further on that. It's all seems pretty straightforward in regard to what was said, considering the law change.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. It seemed relatively pro forma to me, and I noted that you didn't seem to have any complaints in any public hearings near here, correct?
That's correct. We had some people from Hollidaysburg that are still upset that Presbyterian Homes got a zoning variance for some parking facilities when they were building a new facility in Hollidaysburg that called in to complain. But other than that, there were no comments.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of my interpretation. And I would have been surprised if there had been a lot of comments, especially in the digital platform. Randy?
First of all, thank you for the explanation, Ryan. It's not a format or something that I recall seeing us participate in, so that you explained everything pretty clearly. So it makes a lot more sense than my initial perusal through it with the different numbers and where Williamsport fit in. And just to be clear, all the entities that are involved in this, and is the total amount of money available 30 million? Is that what the overall?
That's the maximum amount of bonds they're going to be issuing for these projects. I think it's actually going to end up being a little less than that. But that's the maximum amount of tax exempt money that they can get from these bonds to use for these projects.
But each is specific to the different areas. They each have their own.
Yeah, so we did 11 different resolutions, and each added up to that $30 million number.
Okay.
Some places they're spending upwards of 8 million. Williamsport's one of the smaller ones with 500,000, but there's a couple other locations where they're only spending about that $500,000 to $800,000 amount. So it just depends on, what kind of projects at their various facilities they want to wrap into this financing. So it varies, but it's all like stuff like replacing carpeting, replacing air conditioning units, lighting upgrades, roof replacements, items of that nature.
Infrastructure things, yeah. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks.
And yeah, I don't think that I really have anything in addition to those questions. It sounds as though it's a positive thing. The sheer scope of taking out a $30 million bond that covers multiple states seems to me like more paperwork than any interest in doing.
I've covered a lot of meetings like this one and tried to explain this as best I can. So even though that was still like 5 minutes, it's shorter than it was a month ago when I did it the first time.
This is, it sounds like a big undertaking. And certainly I would assume that the places that are getting $8 million worth of work done on their facilities must be pleased as punch to at least see the investment going in. And we'll be excited to see the one here in Williamsport improved as well. If there are no other questions, I think that's basically all that we'll need for review. Derek, is Mr. Mensler planning to come on Thursday as well?
Not sure. I didn't ask him that. We have a virtual format Thursday as well, Ryan, at 7 o'clock for the full body of council. If you're,
Sure, I
don't
can,
know necessary, but I'm just wasn't sure if you'd asked him or not.
well, I can make myself available. I'll log into the Zoom. If anybody has questions, I can answer them. If there's no questions, I don't need to say anything. But I'll be available should any questions come up.
I'll forward that info to you then, Ryan.
All right, thanks, Derek.
And actually, let me just give Bonnie. Is there anything that you'd like to add? As long as Mr. Mensler's here.
I'm sorry. I forgot I was on mute. I don't know whether this is relevant or not, but to ask if they're going to participate in the pilot program since they are a nonprofit.
Oh, you mean, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's exactly Mr. Mensler's area of expertise, but that is
I'm sorry, but I don't really, we don't represent them on all their business matters. We're just representing them on the tax exempt financing. So I can't really answer that question at this time.
I'm assuming, Derek, at this point that they don't participate in the pilot program, correct?
No, I'm not aware of that. No.
Okay.
I can't say definitively, but I'm not aware of any pilot with them. No.
Yeah. I would agree, Bonnie, that might be a worthwhile question to pursue, but yeah, I'm not sure that this avenue we can use it for, but we can maybe discuss that with the group that's looking at some pilot agreements here in the city this year. So that's anything else, Bonnie, on the
That's all I have right now. It clarified a lot of the questions. I misinterpreted some of the reading of this to begin with, so it did clarify a lot of it.
Yeah. Initially I opened this up and I thought that we were helping you issue a bond, and I thought, oh, what are we doing?
No.
I
even called Randy because I was getting upset with this.
Yeah, but no, this is it all looks very above board, and certainly like it'll be a beneficial thing for all the communities with Presbyterian homes elements within them. Okay, then we will, if you don't mind listening in on Thursday, that'd be good. But you've got 4 of us here, and I think you've addressed our questions, so it should be, I would assume,
okay.
Fairly.
Yeah, so I'll just look for you guys to adopt the resolution, and then I'll look for a signed certificate of approval from Derek on Friday, if he has the time.
Yeah,
Yep, I'll send it to you Friday morning, Ryan. Yes.
Thank you, Derek.
Okay, thank you, guys. All right, then if we're going back to,
I'm gonna log off. I'll see you on Thursday.
All right.
Okay. Take care. Thanks again.
all right. If we're returning to the normal order of things, then, well, actually, yeah, here. Okay, we'll move to item number 1 next, so that Eric can ask a couple of questions while he's still here. Review of the first and second quarter financial statements with Tracy Raj and me, I guess. I see that I'm the one listed here. Okay, and so part of getting the city back on a firm financial footing and understanding both where we've come from and where
yeah, no, I'm not sure. Yeah.
oh, okay. Is beginning to look once again at our quarterly financial statements and understanding the ways in which money is flowing out of the city and sources of revenue that may or may not exist any longer in the city, things that we are spending a bunch of money on versus a little. So we requested and received from the finance department a mid-year summary of expenditures. And the finance department, as part of providing that, projected that we are keeping excellent quality books for 2023. Correct, Tracy? You want to give me a summary of the financial status of 2023 specifically, I suppose?
Are you talking quantitatively or qualitatively?
Let's do qualitatively first.
Qualitatively, all transactions have been recorded for 2023, with the exception of the RVT rent and utilities, because we don't have accurate invoices for those items yet. So the numbers you see before you are up to date through June 30th.
Excellent. And that was something that we could not say as recently as last year on June 30th, correct? So we are.
I would say that last year probably still isn't accurate. I'm still working through the information for the audits for 20 through 22 and making adjustments as we go, but they're as accurate as we have currently.
Got it. Okay, so I'm going to yield the floor to Eric Biter first, because he has to depart here at in about 10 minutes. So Eric, what questions? I mean, this can take more of the form of a conversation, but you might as well get your questions in while you're still here on the financials that we have here in front of us through June 30th.
Right, I appreciate that, but I'll be very frank, Liz, not having these in front of me before in my time on council to digest them, I'm not really sure what questions I would like to ask. Because I mean, everything adds up, and I appreciate that and the meticulousness of it all. But I'm just not sure how I would like to ask the question. So I'd like a little guidance. And
Okay.
You being on council and Randy being on council for as long as you have, I would appreciate that.
Right. Yeah. And I apologize. I didn't mean to throw you into the spotlight.
That's quite all right. That's absolutely quite all right. But I know, like I said, I know how to read a financial statement and so on, but not having these reviews ever before me, I'd like I said, just a little bit of coaching.
Yeah. I mean, I think we probably ask a lot of very pointless questions. I most certainly have in the last several years of reviewing financial statements, and I probably will this time too. But you know, some of what I have sort of historically looked at is whether departments are dramatically over, say, that 50 to 55% mark by this point in the year, because of course this is halfway through. As we read in the introductory email from Jamie Livermore, some of that is explicable because it seems as though certain expenses have gone through sort of ahead of end of term, Tracy? Or ahead of the half.
That's correct. We're actually paying in advance now, but we're only to ourselves. That was just for the internal allocations of costs. Somebody grabbed the July payment and that was made in June. So just that line item, if you're looking, you should benchmark 50% because we're halfway through the year. And if you look at that line item in every budget, it's at 58% because July got pulled into June. If you'd like, I can do a big picture overview for the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you take a look at the numbers, the first thing I would do when I look at these numbers is the first column, the second column from the left says year to date. And that of course is this year through June 30th. Then the third column is last year through June 30th. So my first question when I looked at that would be, why are these numbers so different by department? They're much higher than they were last year. And if you remember, we changed in the budgetary process the fact that there are city hall allocations being charged to every department now, rather than being run through a single line item. So every department is getting their fair share of costs of information technology costs, as well as overall building and facilities costs. So that would be my first question if I was looking at these numbers. So if you look at each individual department's budget, that's all reflected in what's called, I think it's called show allocation. Yes, it's the 77,500 accounts. And that you'll see is last year very small, this year substantive because the way we changed the allocation process. Then the second thing I would look at is we approved a budget. So how are we doing according to that budget? Now, with respect to revenue, I want to remind you that you'll be over 50%, right? Because during the first half of the year, we collect a lot of revenues in terms of real estate taxes and those types of things that we don't collect in the latter half. So you always expect to be over in the first 6 months for revenue. And then with respect to expenses, you expect to be about 50%. She did point out to you, Jamie did point out to you that in accounts and finance, we're over, but that's because we made 3 of 4 payments on our insurance during the current year. So we're a little, our expenditures are a little upfront in that department. And then we did warn you that there are no RBT, rent, and utilities in either year. So I'd be happy to talk about any line item that looks different to you. I mean, I might have made an assumption that it looks reasonable to me, but you have questions.
Oh, well, let's start with a quick question. The money that we are theoretically socking away for building expenses like rent and utilities, where is that now winding up in a city hall budget? I'm assuming near IT, but do you know what specifically what page that's on, Tracy?
I'm sorry, are you referring to the city hall allocation?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That is not in the general fund budget. That's in the city hall operating budget, which I didn't provide to you. I'm happy to provide that to you if you'd like it in the future or even now.
Well, I'm just saying we are transferring money out of rent and utility. So even though those expenditures are not reflected in this budget, that funding going somewhere and being set aside.
Yes. So what we did is we took, we're taking 1/12 and every month, except for June where we took 2, we transferred those funds over into the city hall operating budget to cover those expenses.
Got it. Yes. So I guess part of my concern when I initially read Jamie's email was like, oh my gosh, what's that going to look like when we get those numbers? But we have money set and we presume that it will be the proper amount of money, correct?
That's correct. We'll do a reconciliation to make sure that city hall operating isn't going way over or under, and that'll be reconciled out at the end of the year, and any money pushed back to the departments are taken out. But I will tell you, there's no squirreling away of RVT funds, RVT utilities or RVT rent at this point. Those are in the budgets, but haven't been touched. They'll show 0 for now.
Okay, got it. So these are facilities expenditures that we actually are paying out.
Correct.
The remaining, got it. Okay. And then I'm just trying to think. Randy, do you have any other questions? Tracy, thank you for explaining that so clearly, by the way. I am not a good teacher. I'm not good at explaining basics like that.
No problem.
Randy, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask out of the gate?
Not general questions, because I'm glad Tracy explained some of the things, or reminded at least me about the City Hall budget fund, because that makes a distinct difference. There's a couple areas of concern. What I was wondering, and I did a little bit of math on it, our license and permits number is under last year, but I wonder if you go down to what we budgeted, which I believe is 835,000. I wonder if we over budgeted what we thought we were going to take in.
I can speak to that, Randy.
Okay.
One of the biggest items that, and if you look, it's actually on page 3 of your report, will give you more detail. But if you look at that page, you would typically at this time have your cable franchise fees in hand. And so we called them and we were like, why haven't we received any money from you? And they hadn't updated the address. So they were getting the checks kicked back. So we should be expecting, you should be expecting some of that to catch up in the next few, maybe even next month. We should be getting those checks. The other item is street excavation permits. And we followed up with the codes department, and they are currently waiting on information from, I'm sorry, I'm deferring to Jamie just a moment.
There was a couple companies that were doing work, and when they finish up, he's waiting for their information.
So she followed up with codes, and what she said was that what they told us was they're waiting for a few companies to notify us that they're completed, their work is completed, so that we can bill them for those permits.
Okay, all right.
So what
Okay,
and Tracy, is that all that funding will generally come in toward the end of the year because it relies on street excavations being completed.
Completed. So I would expect, especially, cyclical, it will happen over the
Mhm.
next couple months.
Got it. Okay, sorry to interrupt you, Randy.
oh, no, not at all. Yeah. Oh,
Can I ask one other question on that page,
Yeah.
Randy?
yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
I see that we actually have already exceeded our budgeted building permit amount, which is a good thing. That means that we've made our budget on building permits, and
Mhm.
it sounds that we're likely to eventually receive the TV cable franchise money. So we're not dramatically under budget, but under our expected income on licenses and permits. And this might be more of a question for Derek if he's still there, Tracy. If not, we can.
I mean,
I can this
I mean-
later. Okay. Oh, just do we have any other substantial amount of building permit money that we're expecting for the year? Any other that are yet to come through?
Yeah, potentially, yes. There's a few projects out there that may come to fruition this fall that would bring in some building permit fees potentially. So yeah, so it's possible that we'll see some additional revenue there.
Got it. So we have the potential to be substantially over our expected income on building permits, which would be good news. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Randy. That's all my questions on that. Back to you.
Just a generalized question. If you go down the timeline, and of course, each one individually, or not the last amount of percentage used. And I realize each one has its own distinct story behind it, but in general, there's most everything is under 50%, and some are way under. Can we assume any trend there as far as total budget passed, and maybe we're going to come under that? Or is that dangerous to try to?
It is dangerous.
Yeah.
So the way the city budgets is they budget the expense in the year that the expense is incurred.
Mhm.
So at June 30th, you're actually only at 5 months and not 6 months.
Oh,
'Cause
okay.
most of what you
Okay.
paid in January was pushed
Right.
back to the prior year. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit, I pushed back like I should have, but that kind of takes that 1 month, give or
Right.
take, out of the expenditures for the current year.
Okay. All right. That explains it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. Anything else, Randy, that's striking you right now?
No, not right now.
Got it. Then if I can ask a couple more kind of detailed questions on some of the income numbers, because I think income numbers, we do have a fairly good projection on at this point. I noticed that this obviously is only pool admissions through June 30th, but are we expecting to hit that $25,000 number for pool admissions? We don't have a lot of historical reason to set any expectation
Mhm.
pandemic and having the pool out of commission.
We're at
Yeah.
6,200 as of June 30th.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know it's been hot, it was hot in July, and
Yeah.
so a couple of days, I know I was over there, it was packed, but it's hard to tell if we're gonna hit the 25 or not. I know it's been really, really busy there, which is obviously a good thing. But, I don't know, as far as hitting the 25, not sure, but it has definitely been. I was just over there the other day. The weekend was last week, it was probably, significantly hot and the pool was packed. So we took, I was over there, make sure they're staying hydrated, Gatorades, waters and all that. But, and it was packed with people. So
Good.
hopefully we get close.
That's awesome. Okay. When did the pool open, it opened weekends starting on Memorial Day, right? Or did we not open?
Yeah, and then it opened fully, I want to say June 13th or whatever.
Okay.
That Monday was.
Got it.
Yeah,
All right.
the 12th, maybe somewhere in there.
Mhm. I mean, we know that we always operate pools at a loss. That's no surprise, but just trying to kind of gauge to what extent our expected revenue actually is.
And
You
this
know.
was a guesstimate too. This was obviously our first full summer post-COVID.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
we weren't sure what to expect.
Well, and I believe council voted to not collect certain revenues
Well, that
from the
was-
wave,
yeah.
and that was subsequent to the budget being done. So
So we'll lose. I mean, I think that was like $40 a.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was minor. Yeah, but we didn't
Yeah.
have that.
But you're right.
Just-
That will affect revenue. Got it. Okay, hang on. I should have written my questions down and I did not. So I'm just looking back here. Tracy, the other financing source, going back to the main, to the first page of this budget, the other financing source, I'm assuming is ARPA.
that's correct.
Is that all ARPA or is that also reflecting the TRAN? The
No,
tax-
that's all, that was the full amount that was budgeted to be pulled in for lost revenue for 2023.
Got it. And then with that, 7.6 million, I'm assuming we will have used the full 10 million that we can use for lost revenue allocation, or is there still money out there for the 2020?
I
You've
thought there
told,
was still 1.4 million, but I'd have to look at that again. I can let you know that.
okay. Yeah, that, I don't remember what we took in prior years. For some reason, I was thinking it was more like 3 million. And then the transfers from the general fund, the $8 million that we've transferred so far this year, that is mostly, I would assume, those ARPA funds.
No, that is, give me a moment to get to that page. So that's the very last page of what was provided to you. And you can see that it's a multiple items, including capital projects, transfers, debt service,
Right.
and transfer to the emergency reserve fund that was established through the budget.
Got it. Okay. And we've transferred all of those, like all of those debts are fully paid or whatever, you know, the debt service is already fully paid for the year. Or we've simply transferred the money to the debt service budget and then it will be paid out.
So we have two significant debts. The debt service on the bonds is due January and July.
Mhm.
So those are paid as of today. And then there's a monthly loan. And that's why, if you look at that last page, we're under budget on the third item up from the bottom. We're under budget by 115,000 because that's a monthly payment. So that will be taken up through the rest of the year to pay the debt service on that monthly payment.
Got it. And remind me, what is the transfer to emergency? Is that the fire trucks?
Council approved that money from the loss, the revenue loss came into the general fund, and that the budget that was freed up because of that transfer was able to be transferred into what's called the emergency and reserve fund. And
Yes, yes.
Yeah, that fund is to be used only with certain council approval.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. Not being able to see the full title of it was definitely.
Oh, right, for sure.
Right.
Mm.
Like what emergency did we?
Yeah.
Like,
So
3
that
million.
is that's sitting in a separate fund right now.
Okay. All right. Got it. And yes, I definitely did not make it all the way down to the last page when I was looking through these numbers. I was like, that money's going somewhere and I don't know where. But all right. Eric, Eric's already gone, I'm assuming. Hang on. Yep. Yeah.
He just left.
Randy, any further questions from you at this point?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. I know we're looking at a transfer ordinance for the treasurer that probably puts a fine point, Tracy, on your advocation for not using line item budgeting as a strategy.
Right.
But,
Correct.
yeah. And it looks as though, yeah, obviously that slight being the slight under budget that we are on most of the salary lines is related to the fact that we're actually partly a month behind on salaries.
Well, you'd be about like half a month, right? Because that January would have been backed up, so just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, like 2 weeks out. Got it. Okay, yeah, I didn't see anything else that made me wonder what was going on. It was mostly some of those the zeroed out income numbers. I'm assuming, actually, let me go back to that one again. All right. That the same thing is true, the public utility taxes, beverage license taxes that we had funding budgeted for that has yet to materialize. All of that's coming in toward the end of the year as well.
Correct. They're usually September, October receipts.
Yeah, got it. Okay. All right. Randy, I'm sure that we can reach out to Tracy with additional questions if we have any. And you'll pardon me, Tracy, I think it is taking maybe a little bit of time for all of us to get used to reviewing these statements too. It's just, it's been a long pandemic.
If there's better or different information that you need from us, just let us know. We'd be happy to provide it.
Got it. We appreciate it. How the only other information that I require might be more general financial information. Have we made any progress on hiring someone as a head of the finance department? How's that process?
We're conducting interviews right now. So hopefully in the not too distant future, same with engineer. We actually had an interview today for that. So we're conducting engineering interviews as well. And hope tough to put a timeline on it, but hopefully in the not too distant future, we have both of those roles filled.
Great. Well, that would be excellent. My next question is in terms of the implementation of the new finance software. Have we made any progress on that, or do we have a timeline for that yet?
I have not. I've been working on trying to get your audits caught up.
I know, Tracy. I'm just asking because I gotta ask.
I appreciate that, and it is on the list. But I need to get your numbers in a solid place to get you onto a software in a good way.
Got it. That makes sense. That I guess partly why I was asking that is because we're looking at documentation provided by the old software, and I'm wondering what new. Well, obviously we should be able to pull down our own reports, I would assume, within the new software, correct?
Right. And I want to really take a step back and look at it and be able to provide useful, good information. So I don't want to just take the bad and put it into the new and it'll still be bad. So I want to take a step back and talk with departments about their needs and make things consistent across the city so that the information that you're getting is useful and helpful.
Right. Excellent. I guess then there is definitely some value to Randy and I and other members of council thinking about how we would like these reports to look moving forward, correct? Because that would be something that we could easily modify with the new software. And so if there's information that we'd rather understand a little better.
And you'd be able to see it in real time too. So it's like in the meeting now or in a council meeting, in theory, once it's in place, you'd have your laptops or whatever in front of you, you could just pull it right up right then and there instead of asking,
Right. So you could have clicked on swimming income and seen where we are today.
No, which would be great. Although I also think there is some value to finding like a cutoff point when you feel like pretty much a half a year has been logged in, right?
Right, for sure.
And I don't think that is 6/30/23, just for the record. But you know what I mean? Like when you feel that you've covered a half expenses and understanding where you're at. I know that financial expenditures don't really obey any sort of 6-month rules or even full year rules. So it's a little bit of a pipe dream, but this desire to freeze financial information and understand it is nonetheless omnipresent. Okay. All right. I think that at least kind of lets us know where we're at. When we do start, I guess, so that we can stop asking you when we do begin the implementation process with the new financial software, if you think about it, would you drop us an email?
Yeah, I can tell you that I've been filling out questionnaires for them. They have a very extensive initial questionnaire process. Unfortunately, I need Kristen a little bit for that. And with the implementation of the new outsourcing of the payroll in the last week or so, she's been a little busy. So that's put a little bit of delay on that questionnaire.
Yeah, that's like I said, I think all of us understand there's a lot of work to be done simultaneously with the office right now. And so when we ask questions, it's not necessarily because we're attempting to make anybody feel guilty about some specific item that's not being dealt with. It's just because we don't know what's going on. And we're curious to know when we might be making a switch and when we'll, I guess, see the benefits of this new software that we've all been kind of excited about. But I also perfectly understand the logic of it not being worthwhile to import information over that is flawed initially, so that you can't even backtrack and figure out where the flaws were. So getting things as right as we can before we begin the process is clearly important too. But I think we're all just eager to see that happen and eager to know going. So okay, Randy, anything further to add?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Then Kevin Mackey's been waiting anxiously in the wings because we're probably going to deny this transfer ordinance.
Hey, you don't have to scare me like that. You know, I got more funds than I know what to do with sometimes. But
Crazy. Kevin, I texted you because I was waiting to rake you over the coals, man. Okay, Tracy, thank you very much for your time. That was what I was going
Thank
to say.
you.
And
Thanks.
okay. I added the information. Thanks, guys. Okay, and let me get back out here. All right. The next item on the agenda then is item number 2, transfer ordinance number 3, being presented by Kevin Mackey from the Treasurer's Office.
so this has to be done for 2 reasons, but one I do feel free to make known is our bill for the city real estate actually got sent to the county, and the county was very gracious enough to pay for that, so that we did not incur any penalties and interest. So we're gonna have to do one transfer to cover them, which is part of that bill. And then we also have the school bills going out, which is all part of that automation stuff. So we have 2 bills going out for Infocom that need to get paid, and that $10,000 will cover that, as well as any extra things that may need to occur with our MVPs or LSTs through the end of the year. I don't expect anything for the MVP or the LST tax. So once we have those 2 transfers paid, or 2 invoices paid off, we should be good to go. Part of the reason why we have to do this is, again, we had a extra MVP mailing go out this year as we changed the process from having the licenses mailed in January to mailing them out in May. So this is going to be done to prevent us from issuing licenses to people that are delinquent.
Got it. Okay, so these are one-time expenditures. I mean, I understand they're not related to equipment, Kevin, but how do they fall into the rubric of automation?
So we use a third-party company, Infocom, to go ahead and mail these out.
Okay. So
it's better than having the 3 of us sit down and do 9,000 parcels of paperwork and mailings to do this all. This is something that has been done for years. Both myself and the county use these guys for this one. So it's not like we're getting gypped out of anything like that. It's just a matter of making sure they're paid. And this is stuff that is done annually for our school and city taxes.
Got it. Okay. All right, Randy, what questions do you have?
That's all the explanation I need.
Okay. Yeah, I think that helps me out too here, Kevin. I was trying to kind of understand what the difference between automation and equipment was in the first place. And to Tracy's point that she's been making for a while, it's probably a point in the weeds that I don't necessarily need to be behind. But okay. All right. Then I think that about wraps it up on that item. We'll move on to Skip's item a little further down the agenda, if that's okay with you, Randy.
Yes.
All right. Moving to item number 4. Let me pull out my handy dandy unattractive glasses here. Resolution authorizing payment from the City Council Legislative Contingency. Skip, what can you tell me?
Relatively pretty simple. It all goes back to the rewrite of the HARB ordinance and the grant that we received from the Historical Museum Commission, which required a $2,000 match, and the time to draw those funds down so that we can begin to pay the vendor that is providing the consultant is providing the information to do that, which is McKissick Associates. And so guidance from our solicitor and the president of council were coming to council for the request to draw down $2,000 out of the legislative contingency. It was discussed when we did the contract and accepted the grant. That's 6 months ago.
Yeah. And that $12,000 will cover the total expense of the. Okay. Randy, any questions from you?
No, I don't.
Okay. Yeah, this seemed pretty cut and dried to me, Skip. We know that there's always a match involved with these federal grants, and we anticipated that. Is there a reason why the administration decided to draw down from legislative contingency? I'm assuming it just wasn't budgeted in last year's budget.
It was not, no ma'am.
As in, we were aware of it during last year's budget.
Well, I didn't understand you, Liz.
As in we were unaware that this expense was coming down. Have we not received the grant when we did last year's budget process? Was that the? You still aren't getting me?
I think I
yeah.
am, but I'm not quite sure how to answer it.
Oh, okay.
Because HARB is solely under the discretion of council.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that council had to lay out the funding for this, so it was not included in the budgetary process from the administrative side. And then when we discussed the grant, it seemed that everybody was looking to use legislative contingency to fund this.
Yeah. It's not that I have a problem with doing it that way. I just, for some reason, generally speaking, we use legislative contingency for precisely that, expenditures that we weren't aware of when the budget, money that we effectively kind of set aside in legislative contingency for contingencies that require funding, that we didn't know were going to require funding when we passed the budget. So I guess from my perspective, if for some reason next year we have another grant coming down the pipeline and we know we need to budget $2,000 for it, we either put it in legislative contingency at the time, which I don't recollect, maybe how we did things. Randy, do you remember?
No, I don't.
Okay. But I would suggest that I think I would suggest moving forward that perhaps we put it, if the administration feels that it should be within council's budget, that's fine, but that it be a specific line in the council budget that's a match for a grant related to HARP. I actually feel as though perhaps historically it's been within the mayor's office budget. Because we have certainly had matching funds related to HARP grants before. But I don't off the top of my head.
I can't answer that because this is the first time I've been dealing with something.
Yeah.
I don't ever recall that for coming out of council contingency.
Yeah, it certainly never come out of city council's contingency, but I don't remember where we did budget it within the budget. Anyway, I don't have a major problem with doing it that way this time, but I would say if we're coming up into the new budget season here, if we anticipate applying for another grant, which probably would be wise because it seems to me that we do fairly regularly receive these grants to either perform updates or accommodate the cost of staffing for HARB. Then we should be budgeting the match, I think, within the budget process and not just taking it from legislative contingency. Okay, you said that. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, just kind of keep us apprised. I'm not sure what our plans are in terms of applying for this grant cycle this year, or have we applied for a grant? I'm not sure. Is the cycle
Not
already
in this year's cycle? No, we would be looking at next year once we have this ordinance completed.
Got it. Sounds good. All right, Randy, anything further?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. All right, then I think we move from here on to the final item on our agenda, which is, as always, any related items. Does anyone have anything to introduce for the Finance Committee? Okay, I'm hearing a whole lot of silence out there. So anything else to discuss? I think I'd take a motion to adjourn, Randy.
So move.
The second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I think that concludes the finance portion of the afternoon, folks. I'll see everybody
Thank you
on
very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.